Hi, I'm attorney Gregory Dell with Dell Disability Lawyers, joined by attorney Alexander Palamara, and we're going to talk about one of Alex's recently resolved cases against the Prudential. And always a battle against Prudential, but often you come out on top on behalf of your clients. So in this case, let's talk about the background of the case, and then let's provide some tips and strategies that people can take away from this to apply to their case to either win an appeal or potentially avoid denial in their case.
Right, so this case was an administrative appeal. I mean, we had a favorable result, so our client's still on claim. So it's a resolved case, but the client is still receiving benefits, so we're still actively representing them, making sure that the insurance company knows that they remain disabled, so our client remains on claim and keeps on getting those benefits. But our client, you said this claim is against Prudential. Our client originally worked for Davita. Everyone's probably heard of Davita. They're across the entire country. I think there's like big company, I think either 2,000 or 28,000 locations where they do the dialysis. They're essentially a dialysis center, so they're everywhere. Our client worked there for a number of years. He was a registered nurse, and you would think as a dialysis center nurse, it wouldn't be that strenuous of a job, but lo and behold, it is. And our client oftentimes had to move his patients from a wheelchair to the dialysis chair, so he was actually lifting quite a few times a day, quite a few times a week, and sometimes heavy people, sometimes light people, whatever it is.
Was he like a dialysis technician?
A registered nurse,
but
also doing the dialysis. So lo and behold, one of the days when he was helping somebody transfer from the wheelchair to the dialysis chair, our client slipped and almost fell. Luckily, he was able to uphold the patient, but in doing so, he kind of torqued his back and ended up injuring his back, his neck, and even his shoulders. Being the tough guy that he is, he remained working that day. He didn't actually go to see a doctor for a couple of days thinking, it's going to get better, it's going to get better. And lo and behold, it got worse and worse and worse. Finally, he went to the hospital, went to his primary care physician, got x-rays done, and finally he realized, I can't keep on working. So thankfully, Davita provides its employees with disability insurance coverage, and one of them is a long-term disability insurance policy, and it's with Prudential. He applied for benefits. It took a matter of months. It took about 5 months for the claim to get approved. Lo and behold, he finally did get approved. They approved him, I think it was in March of 2000, or they approved him in May of 2021. Benefits effectively commenced in March of 2021. He thought everything's all good, whatever, I'll remain on claim. Unfortunately, in December of 2020, he became approved in March of 2020. In December of 2020, they denied his claim by way of a denial letter that actually he received in February of 2021. And he was actually a brother of a client of mine, so he realized who to reach out to. He reached out to our firm immediately. I took a look at the denial letter. I asked him what's going on, and I realized this denial is just not right, And Prudential relied upon, and this is kind of interesting, they're pretty lazy on this claim. First and foremost, they said, you did not provide us with updated proof of your claim. And secondly, they said that we relied upon an internal review, and using that review, we don't think you're disabled anymore. So they were kind of lazy in the sense that they didn't go outside and hire a quote-unquote independent consultant reviewer. They didn't send him to an independent medical examination. They didn't send him to a functional capacity evaluation. They pretty much did next to nothing and said, you didn't give us enough proof. Our internal nurse took a look at this. There's not enough here. We're denying your claim. And that's what they did in this case.
So they relied on a nurse?
A nurse, correct.
And is that common?
No, typically the insurance companies are smart enough to utilize at least a medical director who's a doctor, an employee doctor, or they use these independent physician consultants that are outside doctors. But sometimes you see it on a more regular basis. They might just use nurses. And there's nothing wrong with nurses. I mean, our client's a nurse, and there's very qualified nurses. But sometimes it seems to be more appropriate when we have doctors supporting our client's claim that the opinion of a qualified doctor of the specialty that our client is suffering from, or the condition our client is suffering from, might be a better source of information to dispute the findings of our own doctors. So I don't know whether they do it to save money, because it's costly to have more doctors on staff, or to save money, it's costly to hire a doctor to review medical records. And probably the nurses, they get to pay them a little bit less and load them up with all these records, and then they just give a decision that favors their client.
It is really unfair for them to use the nurse, because the nurse clearly does not have the education, the experience, the qualifications of a medical doctor, just straight out of schooling experience. It's a lot more intensive to become a doctor than it is a nurse. It's okay if Prudential uses a nurse to review, but if the nurse disagrees with the doctor, that should be a signal back to the claim rep to say, hey, I disagree with the doctors, but I'm not a doctor. You should take the next step and speak to someone who's equally qualified at a minimum to the patients or claimants treating doctors. And that in itself is an unreasonable type of review, because it would not have likely been acceptable had our client, who's a nurse, gone to just treat with a nurse. They would have basically said, no, you need to treat with a medical professional who's either a DO or an MD or something like that, as opposed to just treating with a nurse. So ironic how they're using a nurse that they wouldn't allow as proof of disability to say you're not disabled. So what did you do to get this claim reversed?
Well, that was the first issue. That's the first thing I thought as well. The other issue that I thought about this claim is that they sometimes deny these claims, saying you didn't provide us with updated proof. And yes, it is the claimant's duty to continually prove his claim. And you prove your claim with medical documentation, like ongoing medical documentation. If you see a doctor, you have your medical records. Always get your medical records so you can provide it to the insurance company. But the problem is when these insurance companies, they're telling disabled people on a monthly basis, we need more medical records. We need more medical records. These people are disabled. It's hard for them to get these medical records on a regular, continuing basis, or sometimes they're not seeing their doctor on a weekly or bi-weekly or a monthly basis. So it's kind of a ridiculous burden for these people to prove. Because you're dealing with a disabled person. Sometimes they have mental health conditions, and you're asking you're demanding a person with a mental health condition to keep on providing you records. You're almost going to drive them crazy,
Right.
But so in this situation, they denied the claim for lack of updated proof and based on an internal review only. So what did I do? The first thing I did was get a copy of the claim file from the insurance company so I can see what the insurance company was hanging their hat on, what reviews they were hanging their hat on, what medical records my client sent into the insurance company, what medical records my client's physicians and providers sent into the insurance company, so I could figure out what's going on here. My quick review said there's a lot of information here to prove this claim. He had positive MRIs, positive X-rays, So I knew there was proof here. So what I did was I got updated support from the treating providers. I reached out to all of his treating providers and got attending physician statements that I drafted that were pretty much written for my client's own claim with very specific questions for these doctors to cultivate this claim even further. And then I also sent my client to a functional capacity evaluation. So I had an independent physical therapist run my client through some functional testing over a course of hours, not just like a 10-minute independent medical examination, but a course of hours to show what my client's abilities and inabilities were. And there was just no way that my client could do his job, which I thought was classified as a medium job. They tried to classify it as a sedentary job, but I proved to the insurance company that there's no way he can do his own job, let alone any sedentary job. And we filed this appeal, and in less than a month did we not get a reapproval letter and the back benefit. So my client was paid back money within the first month of us filing this appeal.
Now, you thought it was a medium duty job, but yet you went ahead and tried to prove he couldn't even do a sedentary job, which is a job that requires you to sit for at least greater than 4 to 6 hours a day. Why did you take the extra step to prove that he couldn't do a sedentary job?
Well, first and foremost, the insurance company in their records tried to classify his job as sedentary, as being a Davita registered nurse. Right. I guess they figured it was not as strenuous as being, let's say, an ER nurse or OR nurse or something like that. But I went ahead and proved, going by his job description from Davita and from my client's own, what he told me about the requirements of his job, to prove that it was not a sedentary job, so I can prove to them that they were wrong on this job description, so I can prove to the insurance company that he's disabled from his own occupation, because there's going to be a 2-year own occupation period under this policy. And then we all know that under these policies, there's a change in definition of disability after 2 years, and that's when they deny most claims. When they say, oh, you can do any occupation now, you're not disabled from any occupation, which is typically they classify that as a sedentary job. So if you prove that your client can't do a sedentary job, most times they have to pay your claim beyond the 2 years, beyond that change in definition of disability. So I went ahead and proved it to the insurance company that he can't do a sedentary job, with the hopes that we can get beyond this 2 years without too much of a fight.
And did they pay him at all?
Before?
Yeah.
Yes, they paid him for about 8 months prior to them denying the claim.
Okay. So it was an unusual time where they cut him off at 8 months versus because often we see either they cut you in the beginning or they cut you at the change of definition. So
see, here my client would have been better off hiring us earlier on, because we could have prevented that denial in the first place, because we could have seen if there was anything missing from his records, or keep Prudential well fed with updated proof of his claim. But I guess he kind of fell behind. He's a disabled person. It's hard for him to get those medical records on a regular basis, to keep on providing them on a monthly basis to the insurance company, to keep them well satisfied with updated records, which seems a little bit ridiculous because it's not like he magically got better. So we could have probably prevented this denial if he would have hired us sooner. But the fact that he hired us, we were able to get him back on claim was a good outcome here.
Well, it's a great outcome, on another Prudential claim of which you've resolved hundreds, if not thousands of these claims. I'm sure the client's extremely appreciative, but it just goes to show that Prudential will kind of jump on any opportunity they have, especially even just relying on a nurse to deny a claim like in a situation like this, especially for someone who, even you were arguing medium duty, I might have even argued it's a heavy duty job, because patients can be anything over 90 pounds puts you into the heavy duty category. But at the end of the day, this particular client, I remember, was like, look, it doesn't matter if you call it light, medium, heavy, heavy duty, whatever you want to call it. I can't work for anybody. I'm too uncomfortable. And it's not just my physical pain, but when I'm in pain, I can't focus, I can't concentrate. I don't want to be near anybody.
I mean, he can kill somebody. You know? So he has a lot of power and a lot of responsibility in his hands as a registered nurse.
So great job. If you're someone out there who has a Prudential long-term disability insurance claim, feel free to reach out to Alex, myself, any of our long-term disability lawyers. No matter where you live in the country, we're available to assist you, and we'll always provide you with an initial free phone consultation. Hi, I'm Gregory Dell, the managing attorney of Dell Disability Lawyers, and I hope you find the video you just watched helpful. We put these videos out all of the time, and we'd love if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Beyond our videos on our YouTube channel, we also have lots of information available on our website at diattorney.com, and we encourage you to come to our website. The goal is that we want you to be educated about the disability insurance process. And when you get to our website, you'll see that we have information all about your specific disability insurance company, your occupation, and your medical condition. And we've designed our website such that you can easily search our website to find things that you may specifically be looking for. Now, at our website, we have thousands and thousands of pages of information, hundreds of videos that you can search. Plus, we're building a section of reviews of all the disability insurance companies, and we have the Ask Our Lawyer section where you can go ahead and ask us any questions that you may have. Now, we realize that you may not need us right now, but you may need us in the future to help you with your disability claim, and we think one of the best ways to keep in touch is by clicking the button below and subscribing to our channel. And most importantly, again, no matter where you live in the country, we're always available. Just go ahead and give us a call. We're happy to discuss your claim and let you know immediately if we can help you.